Hey guys, welcome to my iPhone again. Welcome to my dining room. We got to talk again, I fear, because there's a little bit of a storm brewing in the comment section of yesterday's video essay, which is linked in the description. It's all about like oligarchy, wealth inequality, and why Americans in particular seem weirdly unbothered by the fact that we're in a new Gilded Age and why that is. And it's not all the comments, I want to be clear, most of the comments are very positive, but we've gotten a lot of comments, like the one featured in the thumbnail, along the lines of like, not your rich ass reporting live from Paris about how we need to have class consciousness or tax the rich more or are in an oligarchy. And this is something that we hear kind of a lot on the channel, I think partially because we try to thread the needle between teaching people about personal finance and how to set themselves up financially, and also teaching them about the, let's just say, not optimal economic condition that we live in. And obviously, since the election in particular, when now we have, despite no one voting for it, the world's richest man just completely running amok in our government and attempting to dismantle our democracy. I personally like to picture it like that scene from I Love Lucy where the chocolates are coming out of the machine too fast in the factory and they're eating them with a lot of, obviously in this case, with a lot of ketamine. But we're just sort of imagining that the oligarchy, which has always been a problem in the US, particularly since the Reagan era, is now just taking a sledgehammer to the few remaining institutions that guaranteed some form of equitable representation amongst people in this country who aren't billionaires. So the vibes are off, to be sure. And so we've been creating a lot more content about things like class consciousness, wealth inequality, oligarchy, and our general political situation. But because we also come from a background of personal finance education, there's always going to be people who are like, I didn't come to this channel for this. I'm here to learn how to use a budgeting app or whatever. To which I say, look in our library. We have plenty of that, but we have bigger fish to fry right now. But we also get a lot of comments of, you're rich, you have too much money. Why are you talking about this with us? Acting like you're one of us, acting like you're part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I want to take that seriously, both because, you know, I have a sense of justice. I like to defend myself, but also because I think it's an important political and economic question to unpack, which is who is part of the problem? Obviously, there is no sort of black or white division between who is the problem economically. As we covered in the video at length, like people like to cherry pick who is a good or a bad billionaire. The answer is not only does that category really not exist, it doesn't matter. There shouldn't be these billionaires. But there's also no one to say, okay, at this point of wealth, at this point of wealth, at this point of wealth, it becomes inherently unethical. That's a debate that, you know, someone smarter than me can have. But I'm just going to start first and foremost by unpacking my personal situation, putting my cards on the table. So as I've established on this channel, but if you're new here, hi, my name is Chelsea. I grew up very low income. I am the highest earner of my family. So is my husband. Neither of us come from particularly privileged economic backgrounds, although I'm a lot lower income background than he is. And I used to be in a lot of debt. I used to really struggle to pay my bills. It's what led me to start the financial diet and this channel. But now I am definitely upper middle to upper class, depending on what metric you use. I own 60% of a 7-figure company. I also draw a salary from that company. I also publish books, which pay on average 6 figures plus a year. I live in a dual income, no kid household with my husband who works in tech and is also a high earner. The home that we own is not particularly expensive relative to our income. And in part because of that, we are able to spend multiple months of the year in France, visiting family and friends and having part of our life there. Like, absolutely no doubt, I am a privileged woman. I am also a relatively high earner. I am also well on my way to saving for an early retirement. Like, you got me. The jig is up. But I also think that we need to really define our terms when we're talking about rich. I'm not here to gatekeep the term. I don't know whether you would consider me rich, wealthy, affluent. Use whatever term you like. I don't care. I feel rich every day because I have my health, I have the people I love, and I don't have to worry about money. Like, check, check, check. I never thought I would be able to live that life, so I've already won. And for the people who know us more as a personal finance channel, It is also very true that a huge part of our goal is to help people get to at least a higher place of financial stability, if not outright building wealth. It's something that we talk about all the time. And it also leads to, for example, frequent comments like, you're here talking about wealth inequality and yet you're promoting an investing app, which, by the way, I also use an investing app. It's part of how I save for my retirement. And I just want to be clear, like, this is not a Betterment sponsored video. They didn't pay me to say this. I'm not asked to say this, but like, we work with investing apps because if we believe one thing above all, it is that it is damn near impossible to save what you need to save in this country by just putting your money in a savings account, even a high yield savings account. You need to invest. You need to participate in the market. And if you want my breakdown on that, you can watch my last iPhone video, which will also be linked in the description. But when we talk about investing and retirement and all of these things, even if you're talking about a millionaire, people love to point out the fact that Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. That man is also 83 years old and has been a senator forever. So being a millionaire is not an unexpected result of that life trajectory. And for most people in this country, if you want to retire comfortably, you need to be a millionaire. Just as an example, if you want to be able to retire at a normal retirement age and live on about $50,000 a year for the rest of your life, using the 4% rule, you need to have $1.25 million saved by retirement. And this is not to say that most Americans will be able to do that. By the way, that's a lot of the problem that we're addressing in these videos about wealth inequality. We also address the fact that it's a very broken system, that saving for retirement has to fall to the individual because there are so few social programs to ensure a dignified retirement for people who don't have those savings. These are all problems, but given the current situation that we live in, $1 million doesn't really mean anything anymore except that you might be able to stop working in your early 60s. That's it. That's all that number means. And if you're someone who's able to save and can actually be contributing toward that goal, we encourage people to do it and we give them tools to tell them how to do it. That is the entire point of personal finance education. And especially for people like myself who came from no financial stability, it is truly one of the most life-changing things that could ever happen to a person. But given the context that being a millionaire at this stage of the game mostly just means you'll be able to retire at a relatively normal age, we need to define our terms a little bit when it comes to who is the rich when we talk about things like oligarchy. Because we are truly so cooked if we do not understand the difference between, let's just say, a working middle-aged person who has several $100,000 or even $1 million plus saved in the bank for retirement and continues to draw a relatively normal salary, lives in a relatively modest home, goes on vacation a couple times a year, maybe has 1 or 2 kids, and let's put a golden doodle in there just to give you the perfect upper middle class portrait. And the exploding number of literal Gilded Age level robber baron billionaires and probably soon to be trillionaires who are buying and selling our democracy and destroying the planet, along with all of the celebrities who we just can't stop falling all over ourselves to celebrate while they are amongst the most wasteful human beings to have ever existed. On top of, in many cases, building their entire empire on exploitation and labor violations. There's an entire digression going on in the comments of yesterday's video of which celebrity is abusing their private jet more. The point is that there is now an entire class of citizen who in a single week can emit more carbon than most people do in multiple years. And it's worth saying, but the fact that so many Americans, people in general, but Americans especially seem to struggle with this, really cannot understand the difference between $1 million and $1 billion. It's killing us. I'm sure you guys have heard this, but it's worth repeating. 1 million seconds is about 11 days. 1 billion seconds is about 32 years. These are orders of magnitude of difference. And the fact that we have so many billionaires to begin with, that's a relatively new thing. This is something that our society is just accepting now as part of the natural order of things when it did not used to be like this. Whereas your sort of garden variety upper middle class to even upper class person, that did always exist. And even during the most prosperous era for working and middle class Americans, i.e. the post-war period, there were still rich people too. There were still plenty of socioeconomic differences between Americans. But our policies around things like housing, taxation, wages, etc. were vastly different, and notably, the highest marginal tax rate was over 90%. Now, I want to be very clear that the Eisenhower era, really not killing it for anyone but white people and especially white men. That was clearly an issue. Clearly, whenever we reintroduce these much more progressive, robust economic policies for the working and middle class, It is going to have to be a much more sort of diverse coalition across all lines of what that middle class should look like. But there was an era in which we had drastically less wealth inequality and the rich were a lot less rich. And it was not very long ago, and it was in America. But even during that time, we still had wealthier people. So this idea that as soon as you hit, I guess, like a slightly upper middle class bracket, you are no longer an ally to the cause of fighting oligarchy, to me makes literally no sense. And I really find from a political perspective, because I'm someone who tries to be pretty focused on more electoral politics and growing these coalitions and thinking about how we can communicate these ideas and these values and really sell a more inspiring and hopeful vision of the country. The idea that once you hit a certain income bracket, again, a very normal upper middle class one that might allow you to retire at some point, that you are no longer part of the conversation and are not welcome in the fight against wealth inequality, like, to me is one of the worst political strategies I've ever heard if you actually care about fighting these things. Because not only does it mean vastly less institutional power and resources within that cause, and just many fewer people aligned with your cause generally, but it also just lumps everyone outside of poor into the same category, meaning, again, Bernie Sanders and Elon Musk are indistinguishable from a class position, which is nonsense, obviously, but it's also part of the reason that people are so comfortable with this exploding wealth inequality and the fact that now all of a sudden we have so many 100 billionaires and soon to be trillionaires, because we just think of things as poor or rich with absolutely no nuance, and again, are lumping into the same category people who have a house with 3 bedrooms and people who can buy our democracy. And by the way, I just have to say, this is something that I see constantly on social media, which is that people will nitpick the shit out of some random woman in some random town who happens to live in a slightly nice house and can go out to a restaurant multiple times a week, and they will drill down on her spending and how do you afford this, and they're so offended by the fact that she has a little bit of luxury in her life. Meanwhile, those same people will be leaving like Yas Queen comments on billionaire celebrities who are destroying the planet in real time. So the point of this video is to say that as it pertains to me, you're damn right I'm not broke anymore. You're damn right I'm upper middle class, and I worked very fucking hard to get here. So I make no apologies for it. The fact that I will be able to retire, the fact that I can help family, the fact that I can imagine a future for myself that never would have been possible, love that for me. And if anything, it's only made me more angry and more aggressive about wealth inequality, because I can see on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis how much easier and smoother and more just my life is as a wealthy person than as a low-income person. And I was white in both cases, so I already had a ton of privilege to start with. But the difference is staggering. And my parents, my mom, for example, who was a public school teacher for her whole career, like, there has not been a single day where she did not work harder than me at basically everything and will never touch even a fraction of what I earn. And part of that is because once you make a little money, it is so much easier to make more of it. So I will not personally be backing down from these conversations about wealth inequality. I will not be backing down from constantly ringing the bell of the fact that, like, guys, like, the vibes are off. Even though the vibes were off before, they are off in a very different and very sinister way right now, and we have to take it very seriously. I'm also not going to delude myself into thinking that people who have managed to save a little bit of money for retirement are anywhere near the same level as Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos. These are completely different categories. And until we actually understand the difference between a million and a billion, like, we will truly never be free. We will never, ever stop tearing each other apart over minute differences while a few people completely destroy the planet. As we said in our video essay, it's not left or right, it's up or down. Time to start looking up. And sometimes I'll be looking up from France. All right, bye guys.